All right. I'm making this video because I recently went over to Live by Faith Ministries. I think it was actually yesterday. It had a video where he was talking about how there's people who need to set dates. Because it's like running a race, right? You got the start here, and you got the finish. Right? And let's say it is 100 miles. That sounds like a long ways, right? So if you got to make it 100 miles, and you got to jog this out, or run it, or walk it, or a mixture, right? You sprint, and then you do a bit of running, and then you jog, and then you walk, and then when you rest up, you go again, right? Maybe that's how you do it, right? But you got to get to that 100 miles, right? The thing is that there's no actual rush on it. I mean, you get there when you get there, right? And the whole point is to just go, right? He was saying, like, there's people that they need to be like, okay, just 5 miles. I just got 5 miles to go, and they get there, right? Or some people, they might be like, okay, we just got to get 10 miles. Or maybe they'll take it a bit further. They'll be like, all right, I just got to do 20 miles, right? So when they get to one of these points and they still got to keep going, they'll tell themselves the same thing, right? Just 5 more miles, just 10 more miles, just 20 more miles, right? But that's the thing. When you're running a race, and if you need to tell yourself, oh, I just got to go 5 more miles, 10 more miles, even though you have to go 80 more miles, but you need that encouragement, you don't sit there and run the race and tell everybody, just 5 more miles, everybody, 5 more miles, when it's really 95 miles left to go, right? Or just 20 miles to go, 20 miles to go. And then when you get there, there's really 80 miles left after that, right? You don't do that. You keep it to yourself. So I left a comment, not using this channel name. I have other channels on YouTube that I don't really use to post videos, but I'll use it to check out people's videos. And sometimes I end up using it and I comment, right? And I commented on his video saying just that. Like, okay, if you need to set these dates to keep your morale up, to keep you going, keep it to yourself. And I got a reply that said, then don't, not from Live by Faith Ministries, from someone else, then don't come to these channels, right? If you don't like what's being said. And it's like, okay, this is where there's an issue, right? Because it's not about me coming to your channels and listening to you talk about this, because I've unsubscribed from a lot of people who are getting real gung-ho about the 923, and especially those who didn't apologize for it afterwards, and those who seem like they're just going to set another date. I was just like, okay, I'm done, right? I'm not going to be following them anymore. But those who said, I'm not going to do this anymore, I'm not going to set another date, I learned, be like, okay, right? So they can see that, hey, I shouldn't do this, right? Like Live by Faith Ministries, for example, says, I'm not going to set these dates anymore. But at the same time, he says, but people need these things. Well, if people need it, why aren't you going to do it? Oh, because you know it's wrong. It's wrong to lie. Right? If you got to lie to yourself to keep going, all right, that's between you and God, and right? Because I can understand that. Because I was in the military, and we had to do, run our distances, and we had to do our ruck marching, and to do a lot of these things, we had to, like to do the 101st Airborne, you had to get 12 miles done in less than 3 hours with a full battle rattle, right? So all your gear. And you gotta ruck it out. And a lot of time you gotta jog it out to make sure you get there under 3 hours, right? Not fun, very exhausting, right? But you know what I found motivating? Not saying, hey, oh, just 3 more telephone poles, because, you start counting telephone poles while you're doing that kind of thing, right? different things like that. What I told myself is, let it go, man. You're going to have to do this all day, right? You start at like 6, between 6 and 8 in the morning. And you just, even though it's only a 3-hour thing, unless, you don't get there on time, maybe it takes you a bit longer, 4 hours or something. But I tell myself, you're here all day, man. You're not gonna make it back until sundown, right? So just go. Just go. Right? It's the same thing I do with the rapture, right? It could be today for all I know, but I tell myself it's 200 years away. I don't think it really is, but I'll tell myself that just so that I focus on today and I focus on what needs to be done today. So when I go out there and I do that race, that ruck march there, I'm not saying, oh, just 5 more miles. And I tell myself that, what if this is a 100-mile thing here, you got to tell yourself that 20 times. After, that might work, telling yourself just 5 more miles if you do it like 3 times or so. But after you lie to yourself 3 times, eventually that 4th time where you're like, just 5 more miles, you're like, no, I did this before. Especially as you're getting tireder and tireder and tireder and weaker, and you keep going and going and going, it's eventually that doesn't work anymore, right? So you have to set something way out there, way further than you need. Like when they say, like if you're trying to reach a distance, right? You're trying to meet a mark, like say you're throwing an object, and you don't actually hit the mark. Like they usually use bow and arrows, right? Hit the mark. Well, if you came up short, well, aim further, right? And then you hit the mark. So if you have a goal that is right here, instead of telling yourself this nonsense, you should tell yourself, oh, I got to get 100 miles? No, I got to get 200 miles. Let's double that. You know how Jesus said if somebody pressures you to walk a mile with them, go 2? So just double that, right? If this is what I got to do, I got to do double that. And you put that in your mindset. I'm working to get to 200 miles. So then when you get to 100 miles, you're like, oh, wow, it's over already. It's done. Awesome. And it's actually a reward. Instead of you sitting there saying, oh, just 5 more miles. And then eventually you're just like, oh, if you even make it to the 100 miles, it's like, oh, about time. Oh, it sucks. Right? Because you weren't really prepared. You kept preparing yourself for 5, 10, 20-mile little stretches instead of the full 100 miles. All right, you got to shoot past the mark to reach the mark. Your goal has to be past where the actual target is. And I just thought it was weird when the person was saying, then don't come to these channels. And the reason why I thought that was weird was because it's not about that. Right? The effect that you have when we're all running this race and you keep telling people, hey, oh, just 10 more miles over here, just 10 more when we're here, right? We have 80 miles to go, but you tell them 10 more. Oh, I messed that all up. Right? You got 10 miles left. And then they get here and they're like, dang, there's still, 55 miles left? You said it was just 10, but there's 55 left, but after we've already done the 10. Right? And after each time you come to these points and they're like, we got to keep going, a lot of people start to get discouraged. Like, you said 5 miles, you said 10, this person said 20. Right? And a lot of people start to fall off where fewer and fewer end up going and staying strong. And a lot of it is because you're starting to discourage them by setting all these dates. If they need it, keep it to themselves. And you say, oh, don't watch these channels. All right, I'm the problem because I'm paying attention to these things. You know what this is like? This is like saying, you know what? Don't watch the news because the news is lying to people. Right? It is, but let's just say it's worse than what we see today. Right? Let's say the news is constantly lying about God existing, about Jesus Christ, and other things like that. Things that are true and obviously true, and they're constantly speaking out against it. And you say, well, then just don't watch the news if you don't like it, you don't want to hear it. Be like, yeah, okay. I'm not going to watch the news. But the thing is that news is still having an effect on other people. And I have those other people who are watching the news talking to me about how, hey, the news says God doesn't exist. Jesus didn't save us, right? And it's like, well, now I have to speak out against the news. Because what is the news doing? It's lying to people. It's misleading them. So, yeah, even though I'm not watching the news, it still has an effect on me, right? And these people's channels, where they're claiming to be Christians, preaching this stuff, has an effect on me because people think that I'm in the same group because I'm looking for the rapture. And I think it's going to be soon. But I'm not setting a date on it. But when everybody else does, they think I think the same thing. They see me with my shirt that says Jesus is coming soon with an hourglass on it, and a sign outside my house that says Jesus is coming, and they think I mean 9/23. So when it passes, they're like, ha ha ha, still here. And it's like, yeah, for now. I didn't set a date, And to add to this, my in-laws, they're Catholic, and they've mocked the rapture and the whole idea of the whole thing, and they think that we have to go through what's to come and all that. The church has to be purified. I didn't argue with them about that whole thing. They believe what they want to believe, right? But it influences, the rest of the family, where if I were to say, oh yeah, the rapture was going to happen on 9/23, they would have taken that and used that to mock me, but also to show everybody else in the family, see, I'm an idiot. I don't know what I'm talking about. God's not with me. God's not talking to me. And they would be justified in doing so. Especially if I was saying that, oh, I got confirmation from God. That's basically saying God said that it's going to happen. I prayed to God that I have confirmation, and I got confirmation about this 9/23, right? And then it doesn't happen. Be like, well, God's not talking to them. Be like, yeah, well, that's a logical conclusion. Because around this same time, I'm going to say about a month ago, my niece was asking questions, and she ended up asking me, when's Jesus coming back? Because apparently she's been hearing from one place or another that 9/23 is when Jesus was going to return. And I just told her, I don't know. I don't know when he's coming back. But from what we're looking at around the world, it looks like he's coming soon. Right? Now imagine if I told her, oh, 9/23, you better be watching. Just pretty soon here, 9/23, that's when we're going. Well, then she'd have reason to laugh at me and be like, well, that didn't happen. Right? And then my in-laws could talk to her about it too and be like, yeah, see, he doesn't know what he's talking about, right? You should listen to the Catholics. The Catholics aren't stupid and do that stuff. They know better, right? It would have been a huge thing to discourage family and friends from actually acknowledging the truth about how Catholicism's wrong and how we need to follow the scriptures, and to actually bring them to the gospel that they may be saved, right? Not to mention the influence on others, neighbors, family, friends, co-workers, schoolmates, everybody in your influence that you have influence over. So even though I don't watch your channels, if I don't come to it because I don't like the BS you're preaching, you're still having an effect on me and the others around me. So just ignoring you doesn't do a thing. So I'm going to try to reach you. And then you're like, just don't watch. Well, I wish it was that easy. I wish all I had to do was ignore you and then there wouldn't be a problem, right? That's like, oh yeah, somebody's going around door to door deceiving everybody, basically misrepresenting Christianity. And I'm sitting here, gung-ho Christian, so I'm going to get labeled in the same boat. I have to go out and, clarify that I'm not in that same group and that what you're saying is wrong. Right? I can't just ignore it. Right? Just like I hope you wouldn't ignore somebody getting mugged, sexually assaulted, or physically assaulted, violently assaulted, that you wouldn't just be like, well, if I just ignore it, not my problem, right? That's just not how it works, But I was seeing their mindset, because the Live by Faith channel ended up hearting this person's comment about, just don't watch it. And it's kind of like, they don't care. All right? In their videos where they're talking about this, they speak with a forked tongue, in that they will say, I'm not going to set dates anymore. But then they keep saying things to try to justify the fact that they did, and that there wasn't really necessarily anything wrong about it, and people need it. Right? They're still trying to justify it while also trying to separate themselves from it. All right? And it's a real shame, because I really enjoyed that channel until this. I really did. Even promoted the guy and his wife there. But, not that they needed my promotion, but just saying. As long as if I go out of my way to point out some people to check out in their channels. So, it seemed shortly after that they got caught up in all this nonsense. And I was just like, you got to be kidding me. So now that comes on me. Like, I point people to check out the Live by Faith Ministries, and then they start telling people about this 923. So now I'm associated with that, whether I like it or not, and now I have to tear everything down that I was pointing to. And it's like, well, geez, thanks a lot. And I notice that's what a lot of them are doing, is they're justifying it while trying to separate themselves from it. Right? It's like they don't want to take accountability for what they did. They don't want to deal with the consequences for their words and their actions. They don't want to take responsibility for that and just own up to it and accept it. Right? Like, for example, I think it was 3 years ago, around 2022, maybe 2023, maybe. So, right around there was a Feast of Trumpets. And I was actually thinking, hey, maybe at this time. I wasn't saying it's going to be the rapture. Like a lot of these people, they don't say, well, it's not gonna, just a high watch time. But I was starting to be like, hey, people, watch. Like, even unbelievers, I started to say, we're not going to be arguing anymore. Just watch out for this fall. All right? I didn't really set dates. Wouldn't necessarily tell them, Feast of Trumpets and this and that. But eventually, with everybody talking, they caught the hint of what I was talking about. And then it didn't happen. And then I realized now, when I talk about anything, they just kind of mock that idea. Right? Even if when I want to talk to them about how we're talking about some other doctrine, some other political thing, even some sporting event. Just talking about whatever. And all of a sudden, I'm mocked for that, right? Anytime I would prove them wrong about something, you remember when the rapture thing? Right? Even though I wasn't saying, hey, it's going to happen. Because I would tell them, I'm going to look at every year at the Feast of Trumpets, every year. And this year, that's when it's going to be, so pay attention, maybe it's going to happen. Right? And then I realized the backlash of it. So I stopped doing it. And I saw the effect also on my wife, who was very much looking forward to it, hoping to actually be alive when it happened. And just a disappointment. I'm not going to get into that, but enough's enough. Knock it off. How long do you got to keep doing it? And this is not even the first time it was 9/23. This is ridiculous. If you're going to set a date, and unless God told you where you know for sure the date, you should just keep it to yourself. Use it for your own motivation. Okay, I only have to make it to the 1st of October, because that's when it's going to happen. All right, if that's what you believe, you go gung-ho with that. But you don't go start spreading it around unless you know for sure. Because if you don't, He's going to have a backlash where you're going to ruin not just your influence on others and your witness, but you're ruining the witness of other Christians. Right? I have to deal with the backlash from you being wrong. And you don't care. I know making this video, you're still not going to care. Because you're all going to be very self-absorbed people who only care about you and you getting out of here. That's all you care about. And it's just like, which is funny, the Live by Faith guy there, I think his name is Matthew, was talking about how people's spirits were being revealed after this. And it's like, exactly. All right, he was pointing out how people were mocking and scoffing him and all this stuff. It's like, yeah, you deserve it. You basically said, thus saith the Lord, because you said, I prayed that God would reveal to me to confirm that this was going to happen. And then I kept seeing these signs for 923. So you're basically saying God gave you those signs. So it's basically a thus saith the Lord, even though you were trying to say, well, maybe it won't happen. But at the same time, you're saying God confirmed it. Right? You're giving mixed messages there. Whether you like it or not, you're basically saying thus saith the Lord, because he answered your prayer. Right? You go and do that, and then and then you complain about the spirits of how people mock you and scoff you. And then we get to see your spirit, where you don't care of the effect you had. You actually try to justify it. You justify it. And basically, like, there shouldn't be any backlash for what I'm doing. I shouldn't have anybody mocking me or scoffing me for saying God confirmed this date and it didn't happen. Like, everybody should just ignore it and let it go and move on. Right? And then when you could condemn it and be like, hey, I messed up. No, you still try to justify it. But at the same time, you try to condemn it by saying, I'm not going to do it again. Well, if you're not going to do it again, what's wrong with doing it? I mean, if you're not going to do it again, why is it okay for others to do it? Because they need it. And if they need it, why not do it again? If they need it, set another date for them to keep them going. Right? We get to see their inconsistent BS. And I'm not saying someone like Live by Faith Ministries is a wolf in sheep's clothing. I'm not saying he's lost. I'm just saying his relationship with God is obviously wonky. Right? And there seems to be a lack of humility there. And I know I'm going to get a backlash for that because he's the bigger channel. People like him more than me. I don't blame him. Seems like a cool dude. And I'm far from that. So, no hard feelings. I get it. And good for him as long as he's actually reaching people. But doing this ain't going to help. And that's the problem. It ruins him being able to reach others. And on top of that, people like me. It makes it harder for me to reach people. Because they just laugh at this whole thing. Because it's setting false dates. A bunch of Christians claiming that God saved them at the cross are now saying this Jesus who saved them is coming back at this time. And then he doesn't come back. So they're like, these people seem to be full of the fecal matter, right? They're real full of it because this supernatural God that they are in love with, that they have this relationship with, led them astray or allowed them to be deceived. Well, now you're just a joke. And since we're all associated together, now we're all a big joke. And you don't care. You don't. And this is basically just a witness. It's just like when I witness to people, when I realize 99% of them are just going to reject what I have to say. And I realize that, sometimes giving the gospel to somebody isn't necessarily to save them. That's what you want to happen. But they have free will and free choice, so they're going to reject it, right? Well, in the end, when they're judged, God's going to say, I sent people to you to give you the gospel, and you just rejected it. So sometimes you are just a witness to show that God tried to reach somebody, right? And that's what this is. God's trying to reach these people, but they don't have that kind of humility, which is a fruit of the Spirit. These people have a chance to show people how to eat humble pie, and they could eat it in front of the world here, in front of their fellow Christians, and to just eat this humble pie, eat their crow pie here, and then really show that humility, that Spirit being with them. But they're doubling down. And it makes me very suspicious, especially every time that you get that forked tongue message. You got to pay attention, right? Because you get the forked tongue message of, I prayed to God, the Almighty God, and about confirmation, about 923, and then I got confirmation about this 923 in all these different ways. So you're basically saying that thus saith the Lord, but then all of a sudden you doubt it and say, well, it could be wrong. Well, you prayed to God and you got these confirmations, so why are you doubting? That's weird. That's very weird. So you see, you had the forked tongue doublespeak there. Like if I prayed to God and I got confirmation from my prayer, I would go by faith in that. I wouldn't go, well, maybe it could be wrong. But like, no, I prayed to God, I got confirmation. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to go to God and go, hey, I prayed to you and I got confirmation to this and it didn't happen. So what's up? What went on wrong? Wrong, God, huh? You gave me confirmation from my prayer, and then it didn't come through. I backed it up by faith, and I stuck to it, and it didn't happen. I would be bringing it to God, saying, "Hey, what's the big deal?" But they don't seem to have that kind of faith and that kind of relationship with God. They doubt their confirmations, right? So you got this forked tongue thing going on. And I say forked tongue because it's like two different ways. I got it from God, but I doubt it. Well, that's kind of weird because you got it from God, that should be strengthening your faith to follow through with it, but instead you got some doubt there. And then when it doesn't happen, all of a sudden you get that forked tongue again. I'm not going to date set again. I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. Which is good. You learn from it. Awesome. But then you turn around and justify it. People need it. People need these date setting to help them get through. Okay. Then why aren't you going to do it? You're going to be helping them. Why not, help them? That's weird. That's very weird. There's a chance for these people to get pruned, eat the humble pie, and grow right in front of us all. All to the praise and glory of God. But instead, they're upset because they're wrong. And the flesh doesn't like to be wrong. It doesn't want to eat that humble pie. It doesn't want to do it openly and publicly, especially, right? Because they wanted some glory. They wanted some honor. To be like, look at me and how close my relationship is to God. And then that didn't happen. They have to admit this truth. And if they could accept this truth, Jesus being the truth, it would deepen their relationship with God. But instead they reject this truth. Right? They go on the fence about it. And I wish just not watching would do the trick. But that's not how it's going to work. Right? That's just not how it works. You imagine not addressing things like Roman Catholicism, Orthodoxy, Islam, atheism, false doctrines, New Ageism. If let's just ignore it. We're like, well, that would make everything easy, right? Just ignore all the things that are wrong and evil, and then, boom, problem solved. That would be nice. That'd be nice. I got this wound. I fell, and this stick jabbed right into my calf. But I'm just going to ignore it. I'm not going to clean it up or anything. I'm just going to ignore it, and yeah, I'll just work itself out. That sounds like a smart thing to do. These people. Man. Sometimes I feel like how I imagine Jeremiah felt. I can't say I feel like he felt, because I don't know how he felt, but how I imagine he felt, Never really getting through to anybody. I was once asked by somebody, because they were saying, you can really tell a lot about somebody by who they can relate to by their Old Testament prophets. Like, the first name that came to mind was Jeremiah. I was like, yeah. Not that I understand the book of Jeremiah perfectly, but I relate to him, right? You write something out, and then the king just burns it, and you're like, oh, wow. Oh, that sucks. I know he dictated it, someone else wrote it out, but the same thing, right? It's like me making this video, and then they just delete it. They even hack into all my devices and just delete it. And it's like, wow, that sucks, right? It just seems how it is, right? And I look at it as a blessing. It's not fun. But, when you get treated like you see these other people treated who are close to God, it's a blessing. All right, you get to connect with the family. We can relate together going through this nonsense and better understand God and what he goes through. All right? Because ultimately, all the things that are done to us are what has been done to him and what is being done to him. And he just allows us to connect and relate to that. Because he wants to be known. But anyway, I'm kind of drifting off here. Maybe you can leave in the comment section. You watched all the way through here? What Old Testament prophet or writer, king, priest, or whoever, patriarch, who in the Old Testament do you relate to the most? And then we'll judge you. We'll judge you horribly for your connection to whoever it is you chose. Joking, but not joking, because that's probably what's going to happen. Because that's what people do. But anyway, thank you for your time and attention. I appreciate it. Take care of yourself, because we don't know how long we're actually going to be here. But remember to seek out God's kingdom first, and his righteousness, and everything else that you need will be added onto you. So if you're ever in that trouble where things don't look like they're going to work out, like I'm at the verge of, what I do is I just talk to God and I say, hey, if I seek your kingdom first and your righteousness, everything else that's needed will be added onto me. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm expecting everything else to be added onto me. And if I'm not seeking your kingdom first and your righteousness, please correct me so that I can get in line, so that everything else will be added onto me and I can walk by faith and not by sight, and truly walk the walk. Right? And be an example to the world that you can be trusted. So let's do it. And I suggest you do the same thing. Leave it all in God's hands. And if it doesn't work out, well, go to God and be like, hey, I trusted in you and your word, and you didn't back it up. What are you, some kind of liar? What are you, powerless? Bring it to him. Right? That's what I do. If I think something didn't work out right, like, hey, I left this in your hands. What's the deal? There's usually a good answer. Well, there's always a good answer. It doesn't always come right away. But it's usually, putting my shoe in my mouth kind of thing. But I don't mind doing that. Right? I know when I come to God and I come to him boldly like that, I know I'm going to have to eat humble pie. But it's just kind of how our relationship is. I get in his face and he's like, sit down and eat this humble pie. I'm like, dang it. And I eat it because it's good for me. But anyway, I'll catch you in the next one. May God bless you and yours.